I asked Gail to send out standard emails to Scott and Kim. Once the interview process is complete, we usually invite the patient to help us complete their file with information that may be useful in evaluating our work. Patients are encouraged to write a letter and send it via email or regular us mail. If they wish to keep in touch in the future, we would be happy to receive annual updates for as long as they wish. Of course, we are always ready for personal consultations if they need them. Some patients did not respond at all, while others became real correspondents. We received feedback from both, although to varying degrees. Scott contacted us 3 times in 3 years, and Kim 8 times in the same period. Here's what we managed to gather from their stories. A year after returning from Antarctica, Kim gave birth to her daughter, Everett Corvella. The divorce was completed. Kim and Scott sold their joint home, and all assets were divided equally between them. Scott did not keep the money he spent to pay for her apartment in the first year after the breakup. He felt that he could not live with himself if he left his pregnant wife on the street, even if she was carrying another man's child. This allowed him to maintain a clear conscience. He also hoped that the gesture would create goodwill that would make her less likely to fight over petty issues in a divorce. If it added to the regret of losing a good man, he considered it a bonus. When the first year was over, Kim stayed in the same apartment and began paying her own expenses. The division of property left her in modest comfort. Scott established a communication protocol with her. At first, she often called him, left voicemails or text messages. "Baby, I was so wrong. I was such a fool. I miss you. I broke up with Corval. I have no one but you." He sent her a message that from now on he would only communicate by email. She could write whenever she wanted, and he would respond if and when he saw fit. He made it clear that he didn't want to be around her, but he would be polite. She could only use the phone in emergencies or if she needed to discuss something urgently, for example, if someone died. Kim has come to terms with the fact that she will have to raise her daughter alone. She was lucky to be able to keep her job at the agency. They made it clear that even without the child, her sexual misconduct at work meant that there would be no new assignments at the weather station, Antarctic or otherwise. In fact, they even considered firing her. But she was saved by the fact that firing a pregnant or new mother would look bad. Still, she remained a valuable resource, a talented climate scientist, respected among her peers who could analyze data. Kim worked in the Boston office, and she was satisfied with everything. A good salary, excellent medical benefits for her and the child. She also had a free children's room at work. After a year, she had enough money to buy a 2-bedroom apartment in a couple of cities closer to Boston. My daughter needed her own room. Scott was still living in his apartment. Romantically, he had been dating different women for a while, but lately his focus had been on a girl he met through work. Her name was Josie. She was divorced and owned a vending machine company, and Scott worked for one of the companies that was her client. She was born in Puerto Rico to an Anglo-American mother from New Hampshire. They dated several times, and Scott felt there was something between them. By the 3rd year, his relationship with Josie was up and down. At that time, they broke up again. She periodically went to her father's family in San Juan. He knew that she was still in contact with her ex-husband because he was a close family friend, and it was impossible to avoid him while she was there. The ex-husband still wanted to get her back and hoped that he would succeed. Scott was bothered by the thought of being stuck here while she was there with her ex. It seemed that Puerto Rico had become a new Antarctica for him, or the new White Plains. Scott feared that one day she would return pregnant, so he cooled their relationship. Around this time, Scott ran into Kim and her daughter. It happened at McDonald's. Scott was standing at the counter, ordering a couple of cheeseburgers and coffee, when he saw Kim and the little girl come out of the women's restroom. Kim was back in town to visit friends, and her 3-year-old daughter said, "Mom, I need to go to the bathroom," as they passed a McDonald's. She didn't plan to stay, but on the way out she saw Scott and came up to say hello. Scott asked if they had eaten yet and ordered another burger and coffee for Kim and a Happy Meal with nuggets for the girl. The girl's name was Andrea Esposito. Kim told Scott that she couldn't give the baby the last name Chance because the girl wasn't his child. She also didn't want to give her the last name Corval because she didn't intend to marry him. So they both took her maiden name. Scott agreed that it was the best decision. Since Kim mentioned his last name, Scott asked if Corval was in their lives. Kim made it clear that Corval had completely disappeared from their lives, and she intended to leave everything as it was. She also said that Corval's marriage fell apart at the same time her marriage did. He was not only suspended from missions, but also fired from the agency. Neither of them considered Kim to be his subordinate, but the agency's management felt that his seniority put their relationship in doubt and used this as an excuse to fire him. He had previously destroyed the marriage of another female colleague several years ago, when everything was hush-hush in the spirit of good old boys, and was limited to only a reprimand. This time he was not given any slack. Kim asked if Scott was dating someone. Scott told her about his difficult relationship with Josie Torres and that he was going to travel to Puerto Rico soon to see if there was any chance of saving their relationship. Then, for some reason that Kim didn't understand, Scott suddenly fell silent for a minute, and she noticed that he was looking at Andrea, who was eating. Then he looked at his watch and said that he had to go to a meeting. I later learned from Scott that he suddenly regretted inviting them to sit with him. He just wanted to be polite and didn't think it through. But in the middle of dinner, it suddenly dawned on him that he was sitting opposite the child she had given birth to with another man while they were still married, and the whole situation came upon him with full force. He felt bad and apologized, citing the need to urgently leave for a meeting. We didn't hear anything more directly from Scott, but we learned about his life through Kim. She told us that Scott not only reconnected with Josie, but they even got married. Josie sold her vending machine company in New England, and Scott took a job in San Juan. They settled in Puerto Rico and had 2 children. Josie was happy to be a housewife. Kim continued to keep in touch with us. She gave more information about her decision regarding her daughter. She considered giving her up for adoption, but 2 factors influenced her decision. She aborted her first child. She considered abortion a sin and a disgusting act. It was part of her Catholic upbringing, and she firmly believed in it. She had an abortion in a desperate attempt to save her marriage. But the marriage was doomed even before the abortion, although she did not know it. She was tormented by guilt, which consumed her and drove her into depression. If she had known that her husband knew about her secret pregnancy and was already thinking about divorce, she would have kept the child. So in her mind, she killed the child in vain. She therefore felt a duty to care for this new child, a duty that bordered on a sacred duty. She couldn't let this child slip through her fingers. As for motherhood, she understood that, most likely, she would not have another opportunity. Her marriage was already falling apart. There was no husband who could become a father to other children or help raise them. She once had a good husband, but now he is gone. In the beginning, she considered many options, both likely and unlikely. Perhaps she will meet another man and get married. Perhaps Scott will calm down and return to her. Perhaps she could suppress her disgust and wait until Corval's wife kicked him out. Lots of maybes that couldn't be counted on. The only thing she could rely on was herself. She decided that she would be a good mother this time. Corval's wife kicked him out. She found out about his affair with Kim and why he lost his job. Corval made no attempt to contact Kim or their daughter. Kim decided it would be better this way. She didn't need alimony. She managed on her own. She didn't particularly like Corval. He was just a temporary haven for her during a storm. The chances of Scott returning were slim, and they would be even slimmer if Corval were around. No, it's either Scott or no one. Kim later found out that Scott was dating someone. Over time, she learned about his relationship with Josie Torres and their subsequent marriage. Kim felt sad that she could finally give Scott the life he wanted. No travel, settling down, raising a child. But now Scott had the same life, only with another woman. All this was just a dream. Scott could never raise Corval's child. Moreover, Corval himself was not interested in his own child. Jacques Dormivo. I woke up before dawn, a little earlier than usual. This morning, I met Sunny for coffee before work. Can coffee be considered a date? Well, this is clearly not a dinner date, which many consider a classic date. But this seems more important to me. I really want to spend time with her outside of work. I was in high spirits when I texted her before bed. Her messages were flirty and exciting. She is definitely a naughty and exciting girl. But she's not my type at all, and that worried me. I've never been attracted to uninhibited girls, bad girls, whatever you want to call them. But I thought about it all morning while I was getting ready. Why, if she is everything I usually avoid, do I want to spend time with her? Why am I so attracted to her? There must be more to her than what she makes herself out to be. I feel it, but I can't fully understand it yet. Our personalities are certainly very different. I am reserved and shy, but she is cheerful, energetic, and sassy. I have a dry, subtle sense of humor, but she is simply cheerful, kind, and carefree. She's definitely a freer person than I'm used to. Even our communication style in texts is completely different. I try to write strictly and consistently, using complete sentences, punctuation, and complete words. But correspondence with Sunny is reminiscent of communication with a teenager. Abbreviations, sudden changes in topics. Half the time I feel like I'm deciphering some damn hieroglyphs. And she is 32 years old, 4 years older than me. But she is so petite, with such youthful exuberance, that I often feel like an adult in this relationship. This is completely new territory for me. I had girlfriends in high school and college, but I never invented anything significant into this relationship. My priority was my studies. I went through school at an accelerated rate, missing 1 year. At the same time as completing my school program, I took college courses. Since entering ninth grade, I have completed the 8-year program in 6 years. Easily completed my master's degree. He defended his doctorate by the age of 25. Studying took up almost all of my time, so my personal life suffered. No one wanted to be my girlfriend if it meant going out twice a month when I had time. I'm not a virgin. Because I skipped grades, most of the girls in my class when I was 19 were older 23 or 24. That year, one of the girls in my study group took my virginity on a blanket in the park late at night before she returned home to her husband. I felt conflicted. The sex was amazing. The feeling of guilt before her husband is not very good. I vowed to never have sex with a married woman again, and I kept that promise. I've never been against fleeting flings, especially after I tried sex for the first time. Either he needed a permanent girlfriend, or he would have to do without sex. I didn't have time for a permanent relationship, but I didn't want to give up sex either. I had one girlfriend after graduation. The relationship lasted a year and a half. She cheated on me, which I took as karma for how I lost my virginity to someone else's wife. This girl was comfortable, but never gave me much emotion, so maybe this relationship was doomed to fail anyway. Maybe she felt it too, hence the cheating. Since then, I have been dating girls from time to time. My career always came first, so serious relationships were not a priority. But now I met someone completely unexpected. She got under my skin, and I can't stop thinking about her. I don't want a woman with her past. I see nothing but problems and a broken heart. I shudder to think how wonderful it would be to hug her. I shudder at the thought of others hugging her. This woman could make me happy or destroy me, and now I'm going to meet her for breakfast. Sunny Lamatina. Why am I so nervous this morning? I'm going to meet Jack at Brecky for coffee. Why does it feel like I was invited to the prom? Guys often flirt with me. I myself am not shy about taking initiative. Damn, I'm not timid. Although, in appearance I may seem so. But today my stomach is turning. Jack is definitely not my type. So what do I do? Why can't I get him out of my head? He seems to be partial to me too. I notice how he looks at me. Yeah, okay, he still pays attention to my body. He looks almost helpless, as if he is being sucked into the quicksand of my sexuality. Haha, that's cute. But while other guys look at me like I'm a piece of meat, Jack looks at me like I'm something beautiful, like a piece of art. And I just don't understand it. I don't think of myself in those terms. I understand when I am perceived as an object of desire. I radiate this energy. But am I really beautiful? I don't think so. He sees something deeper in me. We laugh together, and it's nice. But I have a rather earthly sense of humor, and he has a more intellectual one. I really feel something more than just attraction to him. I can feel the difference between the way he looks at me and the way other guys look. They want to use me and then throw me away, and I let them do it. No one wants to keep a girl of easy virtue next to them longer than necessary to get what they want, and Jack wants to be my knight in shining armor. Ha, I understand from our messages that he wants to save me from those men from whom I don't even seem to want to be saved. He exudes a caring and protective energy. Sometimes I joke and call him my hero, but it's not a joke at all. It's funny, when he gets like this, I feel like I want to be saved. I don't know why. I again return to thoughts about my appearance. Maybe it's because guys put so much emphasis on it, and I feel like I'm falling short. I have always had an inferiority complex about my appearance. I know I'm not a classic beauty. I'm more of a mouse. I understand that my petite body type is attractive to many guys, and I can move gracefully and sexy. I also know how to play with my eyes and smile. Among all those guys who just wanted to get me into bed, I felt confident. I knew why they were here, and I knew how to please them. These guys were there every step of the way, so I didn't have to try very hard to keep them. There was always another one on the way, but Jack makes me more nervous than any other man I've ever known. He's different. He's special. I really need to be careful. He is not disposable like everyone else. It's difficult to replace. I've never met a guy who excited me so much and made me think about myself. There's something familiar about him, but I just met him. It's like an electric current runs between us when I'm near him. Static tension, as if I had rubbed a balloon against my Italian hair. Ha! He is very handsome and well built. It ticks all the boxes on my list of external assets. Could this be the guy I would give up everything for? Someone with whom I can be faithful. Hell, sometimes I'm too afraid to get too close, even though he and I flirt like crazy. If I try to get into a serious relationship with him and then go back to my old ways, I won't forgive myself for hurting him. God, he just invited me for coffee. Despite my excitement and nervousness, I know that I need to remain calm. But how can I do this? I've been playing cool for a long time. I keep everyone at a distance emotionally. I'm building a wall around my heart. Crap. I know this. I know I'm hurt. I found ways to survive everything that happened in the past. Injuries. Yes, I survived. But I still know the truth. I'm damaged. Jack. I arrived at the Brekkie Cafe 5 minutes early, and Sonny arrived 3 minutes early. Good morning, Jack. Look at us, we even arrived ahead of time. We immediately approached each other and hugged. To say that we rushed into each other's arms is probably an exaggeration, but not that big. And this hug dragged on. We flirted and exchanged light touches, but this was the first time we found ourselves in each other's arms, and it felt right. Then we broke the hug because we knew we had to, not because we wanted to. We looked into each other's eyes, nodded, and entered the cafe. Well, boss, what's good on the menu? I grinned. Boss, huh? You don't even call me that at work. Let's be honest. Is it breakfast with the boss or breakfast with me? Jack, you were the one who asked if we could see each other outside the office. What did you want from this when you invited me? Sonny, I think it's pretty obvious that we're trying to figure out our true feelings. I want this to just be time for Jacques and Sonny, outside of work. Ha, I know things will get more complicated when we try to split the work and this, whatever it is. Listen, dear, let's not complicate things. When you and I are together like now, we won't talk about work. When we are at work or at some work event, I will not call you darling and will not show my advantages. Show off your assets. Is this how you behave on dates? Are we on a date now, dear? I would like to call it that. Yes. Then this is what I do on a date. At this moment, Sunny slightly lowered the top of her dress from her shoulders, made a slight sway of her shoulders, and the neck of the dress began to fall. The first hint of cleavage appeared. She continued to move, and her breasts began to become apparent. It was all over in 5 seconds. I looked left and right, expecting everyone around me to be staring and drooling. To the left, a waitress was pouring coffee at another table. To the right, an old man was reading the sports section of the newspaper. And right in front of me, Sunny sat with her hands folded on the table, with a sweet but mischievous expression on her face. "How did you like our date, Jack?" "Damn it, Victoria, you're not wearing a bra." "Wow, Victoria. Ha, they only call me that when my mother scolds me. Are you going to tell me off, Jack? You know that you can only scold me if you also spank me. Are you going to spank me, honey? You know that today is a working day, Sonny. We need to be at the office in less than half an hour." Sonny just smiled mysteriously, took a piece of bacon, and began to slowly bite it, like a little squirrel. Like everything Sonny did, it was. So small and yet the sexiest thing I've ever seen. Oh my God, she already showed me her breasts, and I'm still horny from watching her eat bacon. God, Sonny, you are so beautiful. No, I'm ugly, Jack. I'm just a little mouse. You can just imagine my tiny body dancing on your manhood. It turns you on and confuses you into thinking I'm beautiful, when in reality I can just guarantee you a great time. Sonny, I remain unconvinced. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, but I admit that your behavior shocks me a little. There's a lot about you that you need to get used to. At this point, we ordered coffee to go, not forgetting about Gail, who, most likely, was already opening an office. Sonny and I walked into the office together, and Gail gave us a meaningful look. I'll have to take Gail aside and tell her that Sonny and I just met for breakfast, and she didn't spend the night at my place. Although no damn, I don't need to tell her this, otherwise I'll have to repeat the same thing every day, and the day I don't say this, she will understand that Sonny and I have finally entered into an intimate relationship. A while back, Sonny mentioned the following case that she wanted to follow up on. It was a family conflict of epic proportions. This incident ultimately turned one brother against the other and the sisters-in-law against each other. I gave Sonny permission to handle the case, and she arranged a consultation. We were supposed to meet Justin Campbell. He came to us a couple of years ago, before Sonny joined the practice. He then went to several sessions because his wife, the former Cherilyn White, insisted on it. At that time, he felt insecure in his marriage and suspected her of cheating. She told him she would leave if he didn't get help for his paranoia. Their marriage had been rocky from the start, and her behavior only added to his anxiety. He came at the appointed time, and we became acquainted again. Then I presented it. "Justin, good to see you again. With your permission, my assistant Victoria Lamatina will join us today. She has been working with us for a week now and will mostly observe, but may ask a few questions during the conversation. Do you mind?" "Yes, of course. I am very pleased to meet Dr. Lamatina." Sonny laughed. "I'm flattered that you mistook me for a doctor, but I'm definitely not one. As Dr. Dormavox already said, I am just a research assistant, and please call me Sonny." "Dormavox, Justin, when we last saw you, you were worried about the future of your marriage and trying to cope with what your wife perceived as paranoia." Justin Campbell: "Yes, that's exactly what the situation looked like back then." Dormavox: "And you stopped coming to us without obtaining permission. At that time, judging by my notes, the main point of disagreement was that you had what you considered to be reasonable suspicions, and your wife considered them to be illusions." Justin: "Yes, our marriage has always been unstable. We were married for less than 2 years, discussed the possibility of having children, but were afraid of this step due to constant tension in the relationship." Dormavox: "I think it would be helpful to bring Miss Lamatina up to speed by telling her a little about your background, your childhood, how you met your wife, and your courtship." Justin: "Okay. We are both from the same city. They knew each other since childhood and studied at the same school. Our families knew each other, but were not close. We didn't communicate, how it happens in childhood. Boys play with boys, girls play with girls. The parents said hello in the store, but did not interact outside of it. Even as we got older, she wasn't one of the girls I noticed when I started paying attention to the opposite sex. We were in different social circles in high school, although my brother Bobby knew her. He was 2 years younger than Cherilyn and me, but Bobby played baseball with her brother and knew her. He tried to date her a couple of times, but Cher was a girl who looked 18 but acted like she was 25, and Bobby was a teenager who in her eyes was just a boy playing with her little brother. Dormavox, so you and Cherilyn didn't date in high school? Justin, no, I started being interested in girls late. I first started dating at the age of 17, and my chosen one was Suzanne Crozier. I was only infatuated with her, ha. But Sue turned out to be an open-minded girl. She flirted with many of us, and then left for school in California, leaving behind the broken hearts of 4 or 5 guys. So Cherilyn was just one of those people that I didn't notice at all. Everything changed during my first year of college. Dormavox, is that when you started dating her? Justin, yes, during the Christmas holidays. I attended Syracuse University as a communications major. I was thinking about a career in television journalism. It had been a dream since I was 12 years old. For the next 6 years, I told everyone I was going into broadcast journalism. By the time I was 18, it was just a habit, so I continued it. I went to Syracuse, and there I realized 3 things. First of all, Syracuse is cold, rainy, and gray. I hated it. Secondly, once I started taking courses in my specialty, I realized that I didn't like it, and that I wasn't as good at it as I expected at 12 years old. Thirdly, I got a part-time job as a plumber's assistant to pay for my studies and have some money for beer. It was the first job I found and I accepted, and to my surprise, I liked it, and I had the ability for it. So, when I returned over the Christmas holidays, I started looking for technical schools where I could gain a qualification. My first visit was to a local vocational school. I arrived late in the afternoon to pick up information materials and came across students who were preparing the gymnasium for a Christmas dance. And who did I meet? Miss Cherilyn White. Cher dated a guy named Brian Casey, who was studying to become an electrician at this school. She told me that I should come to the dance, that there would be free girls there, and that I shouldn't worry about not being a student because Brian would be able to get me there. I went home, cleaned myself up, and went to the dance. Dormavox, did you talk to Cherilyn then? Justin, oh yeah, as it turned out, Brian was more interested in hanging out with his friends than paying attention to his girlfriend. This was already a constant story with him meeting with friends and ignoring it. She was tired of this and apparently decided to use me to attract his attention. She thought that if she started paying attention to me, maybe danced with me, then he would notice it and become more attentive. Brian actually noticed us while we were dancing. I thought that a conflict was about to begin, but it turned out that he didn't care. He just walked up, said hi, and started talking about upcoming NFL games as if I was just another guy to talk sports with. In the end, I left the club with Cher and took her home. We stopped at a 24-hour diner, had some pancakes, and I brought her home to my dad safe and sound. No romantic moments. We met 3 more times over the next 2 weeks, and then I had to return to Syracuse for the classes I had already chosen. I didn't really tell anyone that I was meeting Cher for Christmas. Even my brother Bobby didn't know about it until I moved back. And when I returned 3 months later for spring break, I was in for a big surprise. While I was away, my brother Bobby started dating Cher. Cher and I were 19 years old, but Bobby was no longer so little, he was 17, and he finally got a date with her. He even boasted that she had a special gift in store for him for his 18th birthday. Dormavox, so Cher really agreed to date him. Justin, yes, and that came as a real shock to me. I specifically tried not to get close to them when they were together, especially at my parents' house. Butcher understood everything. I saw it in her eyes. She must have read the expression on my face. 3 days later, I returned to Syracuse without even saying goodbye to Cher or Bobby. Dormavox, how did your parents react to this? Justin, they were upset. I couldn't tell them why I left so suddenly. I was too ashamed. They didn't even know that I was dating Cher during Christmas, but my friends knew, and more than one of them mentioned that she was now with Bobby. It sounded like I was in an awkward position, and I just wanted to leave. The only time my parents knew about it was when Cher was at her and Bobby's house one day and mentioned that she had met me a few times at Christmas. Then my mom called me a couple weeks after I moved back to Syracuse and said, "Have you been seeing Bobby's girl?" I got angry and replied that she was not Bobby's girlfriend at Christmas and had just broken up with Brian Casey when we were dating. Mom understood everything and said how sorry she was that this happened, and that, most likely, Bobby did not know about our relationship. I replied that he knew perfectly well because mutual friends managed to convey this to him, and he still didn't care. I added that we had no arrangements for Christmas and that Bobby had been crazy about her since he was 13 years old, so it was not surprising that he took advantage of the opportunity. Dormavox. So what's with the gift for his 18th birthday? Did she really keep her promise? Justin. Surprisingly, Cher has some competition. I didn't know it at the time, and neither did she. It turned out that after Bobby began to get in shape, he decided to become a ladies' man. He tried to make it big with the local girls, but they all waited until he turned 18. And on the day he turned 18, he was in a car with Janelle Kiata during the day. Janelle was known for her madness and love for public displays of affection. She didn't care where she had sex. Cher was one of the people who saw them doing this in the car, and that was the end of her and Bobby's relationship. So when I returned from Syracuse at the end of May, Cher and Bobby had already broken up. I was glad that they didn't have time to sleep. I wouldn't be able to continue my relationship with her if she was with him. Dormavox. Then you started dating her. Justin. Yes, Cher apologized to me over the summer and said that we didn't have an agreement, so she felt free and decided to try with Bobby. She said that he had been pursuing her for a long time, he was handsome, and she decided to see what would come of it. But now she realizes it was a mistake and hopes we can start again. We started dating again and things started to take off. I enrolled in a local technical school to get my plumbing degree. Cher decided to defer college and worked as a bank teller. Bobby wasn't happy about losing Cher, but by then he was a party boy with a new toned body and enjoying his success with the girls. I only had one, and I only wanted one Cheryl White, but Bobby seemed annoyed about it all. I remember how I felt in the spring when I saw them together, so I understood that it was unpleasant for him to see us together. But the difference is that he himself ruined everything by cheating on her. Dormavox, how did your brother feel about your relationship with Cherilyn starting to develop? Justin, he did everything he could to create problems for us, but in a way that wasn't obvious. It was always veiled so that it could be justified. He did this very subtly, so that no one would have guessed that he was deliberately pushing us into conflict. He learned to say things like compliments to Cher in my presence that would flatter her, but also irritate me. Dormavox, for example. Justin. Well, it all started with ordinary, harmless phrases like, "You have a great dress," or "I like the way you did your hair." At first it was innocent. Cher was used to him complimenting her in front of me, and they did not go beyond the bounds. But then he gradually moved to this border. The next step was saying things like, "You look really hot." And then, a little later, it turned into, "You must be working out because these jeans show off your figure." I would then start telling him, "Bobby, that's enough." Butcher liked it. She'd say, "Oh, honey, don't be like that. He's just complimenting me." And I understood that my words irritated her. It wasn't until it got to the point of, "Damn it, Cher, I need a girl with an ass like yours," that I had a serious conversation with Bobby. But of course, he turned it all into a joke, saying that I couldn't perceive his humor. Dormavox, have you discussed this with Cherilyn? Justin, shortly after I told Bobby to stop, Cher came to me annoyed. It turned out that Bobby complained to her that I was against his compliments. She started saying that I was acting like a child. I tried to explain to her that there is a difference for me. I even gave an example. If I went up to her mother and said in front of her father, "Mrs. White, you look beautiful today," her father would not pay attention. But if I said, "Hey, Mrs. White, your butt looks great in that dress," how would her father take it? And I saw that it was starting to dawn on Cher. She said she would talk to Bobby and tell him to stop. Dormavox, Did Bobby change his behavior after this conversation? Justin, it's more like he changed his tactics. The words no longer sounded, but the looks appeared. He began to look at her suggestively, examining her figure, and then throwing me a smirk. His views weren't all that subtle. Cher understood what he was doing, and she liked it. He did enough to irritate me, but not so much that I would lash out at him. And Cher took his views as compliments. All this made me nervous, but I continued to build a relationship with her despite this, and how I regretted it later. Dormavox, did this regret begin to appear even when all this was happening? Justin, no, at that moment I was crazy about her. Every day I fell in love more and more. Her enjoyment of Bobby's attention was only a minor annoyance. I didn't blame her for it, because if someone says something nice to you, you can't help but feel good. My problem was with my brother, who crossed the line by trying to make me jealous. It was obvious that he wanted to destroy our relationship in order to win her for himself. Dormavox, when you say win her, do you mean that he wanted to marry her, or was it a more temporary, physical desire? Justin, knowing Bobby, I think she was just one of the girls he wanted to get, not marry. I thought he was not the kind of person who was ready for marriage. When he actually got married, I was shocked. Dormavox, did he get married? When did this happen? Justin, yes, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This happened shortly after Cher and I got married. Then his flirting with Cher only encouraged me to take my relationship more seriously. Perhaps it was her strategy to let Bobby flirt to make me feel competitive and more active. And it worked. We got engaged. I already had all the necessary documents as a plumber, I was earning decent money, and in the future, as my career grew, everything was going to get even better. We could afford a wedding, and in a year we planned to buy a house and maybe have children in too. This was our plan. As for what Bobby wanted from Cher, I think his reaction to our engagement said a lot. If he really was in love with her like a normal man, he would have congratulated us and expressed his regret, perhaps trying to hide his feelings. But this was not the case. His words were cool, and his gaze was full of anger and resentment. This is definitely not the reaction I would expect from a guy who just dated her for a little while and then moved on to other girls. It seems that he considered himself entitled to receive from her that 18th birthday gift that he never received. So yes, to him, she was just a lost opportunity. Dormavox, you mentioned that Bobby also got married shortly after your wedding. How unexpected was this? Justin, it was extremely unexpected. He didn't even have a date at my wedding, so it didn't seem like he had anyone serious in his plans. Moreover, at my wedding, he still continued to flirt with Cher. Dormavox, what exactly did he do at your wedding? Justin, it was a disaster. He ruined my whole day. My own wedding day. I was so angry at both of them that our marriage never recovered from that. His behavior at the wedding and her reaction is what predetermined the collapse of our marriage. Dormivo, tell me more. What was his behavior and her reaction? Justin, it all started with the ceremony when guests came up to us to congratulate us. Bobby was not one of the best men because his attitude towards our relationship was so hostile and disruptive. The family expected him to be at least a friend. I sat down with my parents to explain what has been going on behind the scenes for the past 2 years. They couldn't believe that one son could do this, and they didn't want to think that the other son was lying. They tried to reconcile us. I think I scared them a lot when I suggested a compromise, inviting him to the wedding just as a guest. My parents were horrified that I could even think of not calling him. Cher was also unhappy with my decision. She hesitated to support me in this matter. Even then, I should have seen this as a warning sign about how our marriage would develop. But in the end, Bobby was invited as a guest. And so he comes up to us in line for congratulations, smiles loudly so that everyone can hear, announces, "Damn, you still owe me a birthday present." This was heard by our close friends who knew the context. His gift was the same innocence she promised him on his 18th birthday. Dormavox, what was the reaction of those present? Justin, I was dumbfounded. My parents, who did not know about this episode from the past, were at a loss. And the worst thing was that Cher, without the slightest embarrassment, laughed cheerfully and answered, "Well, we'll see." On the way to the reception, I asked her what that even meant, and here I am already arguing with my newly made wife on our wedding day. I told her that I was already annoyed with Bobby, but at least I expected this behavior from him, because he was always an idiot. But I really didn't expect her to say, "We'll see," instead of just saying, "No way." Now she's mad at me because my feelings are hurt, and suddenly it's all my fault. Then she danced with Bobby during the reception. It was unpleasant, but I restrained myself because it is normal for the bride to dance with the groom's relatives. I mean, she danced with my dad once, so it was the same thing. But later I saw her walk up to Bobby, start chatting with him, and then drag him to the dance floor. If there had been tension between Cher and me before, now things have become heated. I waited until she returned to our table and asked what the hell was going on with Bobby. She said that if she couldn't have a good time with me, she would have a good time with the other guests. I told her that it was her behavior with Bobby that made me bad company, and that I was surprised that she didn't try to at least somewhat respect my feelings about this whole situation with my brother. She told me to grow up and stop being so sensitive. She didn't have an ounce of remorse or shame. Then she did her best to teach me a lesson. By the time I danced with my wife twice, she had danced 6 more times, 3 times with 3 different people, including my father, and 3 times with my brother. My mother noticed the expression on my face and realized what was happening. She spoke to Cher's mother, who was also not blind. They agreed that it looked bad, and people were already starting to whisper. Cher's mom came over to talk to her. I couldn't hear it over the music, but it looked pretty lively. Cher was angry, and her mom looked annoyed. At one point, Cher and I were alone at our table, and I asked her if I could dance with my wife for the rest of the reception. She replied something like, "That can be arranged." Dr. D, does something seem to go wrong? Justin, yes. We went our separate ways again to mingle with the guests, as a bride and groom should. At some point, she argued with her mother again. A few minutes later, she was chatting with my brother in the corner. Then I saw her approach the leader of the group and say something to him. This lasted several minutes, during which she looked back at Bobby a couple of times. Then she finished the conversation with the musician, returned to Bobby for a few seconds, said something to him, and went back to interact with the guests. While I was chatting, I walked over to the table where my single friends were sitting. One of them said that, leaving the toilet half an hour ago, he heard Cher and Bobby talking in the corridor. He still told her how beautiful she was and how hard it was for him to let her go when they danced. She told him that it was the best moment of her day and that her husband was an insecure jerk who ruined the happiest day of her life and that he would pay for it. Bobby invited her to run away with him for half an hour so that this day would still be her happiest. She laughed and said, "Some other time," because she still needed to try to make things work with what she called her jerk brother. Now, to describe the setting, my friends and I were sitting at the opposite end of the room from the band, and I heard the musicians finishing the song. Perhaps this is what made me look in their direction, and I was just in time to notice the leader of the group waving in Cher's direction, attracting her attention. Then they made eye contact, and the host tapped his index finger on his wrist, and then the next song began to play. Cher walked up to Bobby, took his hand, and led him to the dance floor. The dance ended, and Cher walked over to her mom's table and sat down next to her. The heated discussions began again, and Cher's mom again looked annoyed and Cher looked angry. At some point, Cher's mother turned in my direction and, as I understood, made a gesture in my direction, saying something to Cher. I excused myself to the restroom and came out 5 minutes later, deciding that I had better hurry up if I still had any hope of getting Cher on the dance floor. I returned to the hall and saw that the group was already dismantling the equipment and getting ready. Dr. D, so you didn't get the last dance with Cher? Justin, exactly. I approached the presenter and asked what was happening. He pointed to his watch and said that their performance was over. I tapped his wrist with my finger, as I had seen him do before, and asked what the gesture meant when he showed it to my wife. He said that Cher asked him to give her a sign when they played the last song so that she could definitely have the last dance. He was surprised that she didn't have the last dance with me. I told him that the day was full of surprises. He looked at me sympathetically. Dr. D, this seems like a deliberate move by Cher to offend you. Did you discuss it after that? Justin, of course. Just like her parents. Just like my parents. They saw her dance her last dance with Bobby, and they were horrified. They saw the look on my face and were furious with her. They scolded her from head to toe. She tried to argue, tried to run away. They blocked her path. I stood aside and just watched. She saw me but quickly turned away. The only one who wasn't there was my idiot brother. I think they wore her down because she became less aggressive. Finally, her father looked at me and asked how the whole day had gone downhill so quickly. How we went from happiness at the altar to this. I told him about Bobby's history with the lewd innuendo, how Cher enjoyed and encouraged it, her promise to take Bobby's virginity on his 18th birthday, Bobby's comment in line at the reception that she still owed him that gift. And her answer is, "We'll see." I told her that I confronted her about it on the way to the banquet hall, and she pretended that it was my fault, and then the whole reception made me pay for it, only increasing the disrespect. How she organized the last dance to be with my brother. One day was simply not enough for her to express all her disrespect. She just couldn't fit all the disrespect into one day. I added sarcastically that I was looking forward to seeing what else she had in store for the rest of the day. The man was terrified. Dr. D, did Cher object to your words? Justin, no. Surprisingly, she fell silent and looked stunned, almost as if it had finally dawned on her. And then her father completely shocked her and attacked her strongly. Right in front of everyone. He told her how ashamed he was of her. Said he paid for the party so everyone could have a good time, and she ruined it. He said that by letting Bobby come between us, she was a bad girl, a bad bride, and in the few hours she was a wife, she became an even worse wife. Then he apologized to me for raising his daughter poorly. I thanked him and everyone else for coming. I looked at Cher and simply said, "Goodbye." Then I walked up to my friends and asked for a ride. They took me to Cher's and my apartment, left wedding gifts there, left a limousine that was supposed to take us to the airport for our honeymoon. Dr. D, did anyone follow you? Justin, her parents brought her there. They thought I might be there. I was sitting with friends drinking beer when they arrived. I was wearing sweatpants. My wedding tuxedo lay on the living room floor. Cher came in, all nervous and quiet. 4 parents followed her in. The limousine followed them and stood outside. In the trunk were our suitcases, already packed for our honeymoon. Dr. D, did you go on your honeymoon? Justin, hell no. Sorry, Doc. No, of course we didn't go. I walked out the door, asked the driver to open the trunk, and my friends and I carried my things into the apartment. Her things were left in the trunk. A big quarrel broke out over this. Cher, who, let me remind you, still has not apologized to me, asked, "What about our honeymoon?" I told her that her things were still in the trunk, and all she had to do was pick up Bobby and go to the airport. The plane hadn't left yet. Finally, she said she was sorry and that she wanted to go with me, not Bobby. She said we already had tickets, and I yelled at her. Everyone was shocked. I said, "Fuck the tickets." I said I wanted to put my tuxedo, her dress, the wedding gifts, and the damn tickets in a big pile and have a bonfire. If the wedding album was ready, I would burn it too. I said I'll just have to make a separate fire when it's ready. She fell to the ground, still in her dress, and began to cry. She said, "Not a dress," and I said, "Why do I need these rags in the house? Bobby's DNA is all over it." She howled. Her father looked at me with respect in his eyes that I had never seen before and nodded his head. Dr. D, what happened to the reservation? Justin, I just didn't show up, so she didn't leave either. It's a waste of money, and this is unpleasant, even if you are a plumber. I went to bed alone and told her that her choices were the couch, her parents, or Bobby. It's over between us. On Monday, I went to work. Got home at 6 in the evening, and she cooked dinner. I tried to pretend that everything was fine and asked how my day was. I said that I installed a bathtub in one house, unclogged a drain in another, and visited a lawyer to discuss whether divorce or annulment was better. Dr. D. How did she react? Was she shocked, or did she accept it? Justin. More like accepted. Or maybe it's better to say resigned. She said she wanted to stay married. And then I told her what I wanted. It was like the list I was listing. I want a good wedding with nice people in the congratulations line. A line where my wife doesn't suggest maybe having sex with another man later. I want my wedding day to be the happiest day of my life. I want a reception where my wife loves and respects me. I want a reception where my wife dances with another man twice and with me 7 times, not the other way around. I want wedding and reception photos that I can treasure when I'm old. An album that I can leaf through with my wife when I'm 80. A photo of us dancing at our wedding that will hang in the hallway and stand in my work. I want a woman with whom I can remember our wedding day with love. And guess what? I lost it all. You stole this from me. The only way to get this is to find a woman who will give it all to me with love. And it's clearly not you. So I should start looking now. Dr. D. So you continued to live together. Justin. I didn't leave and she didn't leave. She got a sofa because we had a one-room apartment. I told her that I didn't consider us married anymore and that she could stay or go. I didn't care. She began to show remorse. She became nice to me. I continued to buy groceries just for myself. Everything she wanted for herself, she bought herself. So she cooked with what she had on hand and continued to prepare lunches and dinners. She had her own job and her own money. One day she came home and saw real estate magazines. She realized that I was looking for new housing. She asked if she would have a say in the matter, and I said no. I'm looking for a home for myself to start a new life after a divorce. She will be able to keep the apartment and remove my name from the lease agreement. The next evening I came home, and she was in a terrible state. She had been crying all day and was still wearing the nightgown she'd woken up in. She begged me to give her another chance. I asked her how she was going to give me a chance to get what I want. The wedding, the reception, the honeymoon. I asked her how we could invite everyone back to the wedding. How can we arrange a second reception? How can we invite all the guests and make them act as if nothing happened? Make them forget that failure. She couldn't answer, so I filed for divorce. Dr. D. She moved out. Justin. No, I haven't moved out. My parents were imbued with her remorse and how hard she tried not to let me go. About 4 months after the wedding, they came to visit us and mentioned that Bobby was engaged. Dr. D. But he came to your wedding without a partner. Did he meet her during these 4 months? Justin. No, he knew her for several years. Rachel was one of the few girls he dated but didn't sleep with. He usually liked easy girls. He didn't waste time on people who weren't going to sleep with him. But Rachel was different. Very nice girl. Aside from her virginity, she was the type of girl he liked, beautiful, sexy, with a fun personality. I liked her. I knew her through mutual friends. She came to our town after graduating from high school, so it wasn't like Cher, who I'd known almost my whole life. But he'd been seeing Rachel off and on for the past 2 years, and apparently he'd suddenly gotten serious. I was both surprised and glad that he might have decided to change his life. This affected my feelings about the Cher situation a little. In his shadow, it was difficult to fully mend our relationship. It didn't solve my other problems with Cher, like her disrespecting me, her humiliating me at the wedding, ruining a day I could never get back, ruining the opportunity for a nice honeymoon. But at least I no longer had to worry about her sleeping with my brother, sorry for the French. Dr. D. So things got a little better between you and Cher because of that. Justin. Maybe just a little bit. I started talking to her a little more. I stopped actively looking for housing. I'm used to having her around. We still slept separately. There was no sex. When it came to the engagement, she seemed depressed. She said that she wanted to restore our relationship. I slowed down with the divorce and enjoyed the improvement, but there was still a cloud hanging over us. Dr. D. What did Cher think about Bobby's fiancé? Justin. She wasn't openly hostile to her, didn't talk bad about her. But she, as they say, followed Bobby's tactics, and skillfully belittled her. She basically discounted their relationship by saying that Bobby was only interested in Rachel because Cher and I got married. To be honest, I couldn't rule out the thought myself, but at least I always tried to talk about them positively. Dr. D. It seems like everything was about Cher for Cher. Justin, that's, um, never thought of it like that before, but I think you might be right. If she had a pattern, her first question was always, how does this affect Cher? When she hurt me at the wedding, she never cared about my pain. The whole point was that my pain was spoiling her fun. Then she doubled down and did even more to hurt me, like dancing with Bobby, again so Cher would get her comeuppance. The fact that she humiliated me, my family, and her own family did not bother her at all. She realized this only when everyone surrounded her and expressed everything. It's funny that I didn't see any of this before the wedding. I think that while only good things happened to us, everything was fine with Cher too. Now, thanks to your point, I think that the whole situation with Bobby and Rachel was weighing on Cher because he was like some kind of lever of power in our relationship that she was now losing. I mean, I'm starting to see it that way. Sonny, let me interrupt you for a second, but are you and Cher together now? Justin, no problem, Sonny. No, we're not together. And Bobby and Rachel aren't there either. And even stranger, neither Bobby nor Cher are together now. Dr. D, so Bobby and Cher got together in the end? Justin, yes, we agreed. And both were still married to me and Rachel when this happened. Bobby and Rachel moved in together and were preparing for their wedding. Things became a little calmer between me and Cher. We even had sex for the first time since we got married. I won't say it was love. There was some hostility there. I think she was shocked, but she didn't complain. We stopped sleeping in separate rooms, but it didn't become anything romantic. Rather, we are simply tired of quarreling. But life went on. When I went to work, my plumbing business was slowly growing. Cher was also doing well at her job at the bank. Dr. D, did you think that the détente between you and Cher had something to do with the fact that Bobby began to build a relationship with Rachel? Justin, I had no evidence, but such thoughts came to mind. Admittedly, I didn't have much time to think about it because everything with Bobby and Rachel was moving so quickly. The wedding took place just a few months after they announced their engagement. Cher and I went to see it. No, I was not the best man. He didn't ask, and I wouldn't agree. I behaved decently in the congratulations line. He knew what he did to me when he told Cher and I in line at our own reception, and I think he was nervous that I would make a scene. I saw it in his eyes. Great. I was glad to make him nervous. But everything went smoothly. I had a better time at his reception than at mine. Cher and I danced a few times, and she never danced with Bobby. This greatly influenced our relationship with her in the future. We had a good time, and I decided to take advantage of this positive moment to move the relationship forward. Dr. D, did she respond to your efforts? Justin, yes, I really did. I think it gave us a break from the hell we were living in. Coming home to silence, hostility, bitterness, it suffocated us. We both hated it. She wasn't going to apologize, and I wasn't going to let go of my pain, and we weren't going anywhere. But we left that reception with smiles. It was almost like that repeat I thought I would never get from my own screwed-up party. We didn't discuss this. I think we were both too afraid to look back for fear that the fights would start again. So we continued to take things one step at a time. We started smiling at each other more. We relaxed more. We interacted better, and things got better in the bedroom too. One day, in a moment of passion, one of those moments where you can scream anything, I muttered, "I love you," and she responded in kind, held me tighter, and we got through it together. Dr. D, but you mentioned that at some point Cher and Bobby became close again. What caused this? What was the time interval between the moment you confessed your love to each other and her betrayal? Justin, that was about 5 or 6 months later. Cher and Rachel talked sometimes, even though they weren't close. Not close at all. Cher never really loved Rachel. It wasn't Rachel's fault. She's a wonderful girl. I never understood what she saw in Bobby. But now that I think about it, Cher probably still had some feelings for Bobby. She tried to fight them, tried to be a good wife to me after they got married, but couldn't accept Rachel taking her place. However, they were often forced to be together at family events, Cher and Rachel, and Cher tried to be friendly with her. They started discussing plans to have children, as newlyweds probably do. Dr. D, they both wanted to have children. Justin, Cher said she wanted to, but without much enthusiasm. But Rachel was full of enthusiasm. Now, looking back, I think Cher was annoyed by Rachel's willingness to become a mother. I think Cher wanted to have children with Bobby and was angry that Rachel was the one who was going to do it. So when Cher said she wanted kids someday, but said it less enthusiastically, it was probably because she was either still unsure about our future or because she actually wanted kids from Bobby. Who knows, maybe both. After one of these family picnics, where there was a lot of talk about children, I noticed in Cher a slight sadness and distance that I had not felt since we made up after Bobby and Rachel's wedding. Dr. D, did you manage to regain that happiness? Justin, I'm not sure I understand. Dr. D, that's an improvement after you and Cher became close again at Bobby's party. Justin, no, unfortunately, it was short-lived. After Rachel started discussing children, Cher began to distance herself. This happened in a few weeks. I said something, and Cher pretended that everything was fine, even initiated sex herself. But the love that was at that moment disappeared. Now it felt like a routine. At the same time, she began to disappear. Not for a long time, but say, an hour and a half with the girls from the bank after work on Fridays. So 2 hours here. Then suddenly, shopping with Rachel, which seemed strange to me. They didn't usually communicate. We were looking for cribs for the children, just in case they got pregnant. So a few hours there. But something wasn't right about it. I had a strange feeling that she was hiding something. Dr. D, have you confronted Cher about your suspicions? Justin, not right away. First, I decided to do my own research. Quietly. I didn't see the point in hiring detectives at this stage. I decided to find out everything myself. I knew where the girls from the bank went for their get-togethers, so I arrived at Mulligan's early one Friday, sat in the corner to avoid being noticed, and watched the place gradually fill up. And so, a crowd of bank employees whom I knew burst in. I watched from a safe distance and stayed there for 2 hours. No sign of Cher. Just as I was about to leave, my phone rang. A message from Cher she's back home and surprised that I'm not here yet. She asked what we were having for dinner. I knew she liked sushi, so I told her I was late, but I'd go get some rolls at Khonshu. I came home and asked where she had been at the get-togethers. She lied to my face and said she was at Mulligan's. Dr. D, did you tell her that you know the truth? Justin, no. I knew she wasn't there, but I wanted to find out where she really was. The next day was Saturday, and she went shopping with Rachel. At Babies R Us or something like that. She left at 10:30 and said she would be back at 5 to prepare dinner. I calculated the time. 30 minutes to get to Rachel's house. From there, they would drive together, plus another hour to get to the store. When I counted the time, I picked up the phone and called Rachel. She answered. I pretended that everything was fine and asked how my beloved daughter-in-law was. She was fine. Said she was painting one of the rooms in their new house. She explained that Saturday is her only day to do household chores. I joked that Saturday was also a great day for shopping, and she said she hadn't been shopping on a Saturday for months. Now my suspicions were heightened, and I decided to ask the question I had been dreading. Can I talk to Bobby? Rachel said Bobby left around 11 a.m. and was hanging out with the guys, picking out a lawnmower at the depot, and that he wouldn't be there until dinner. I had a bad feeling. Dr. D, how did Cher behave when she returned home? Justin, well, if I didn't suspect anything, I'd say she was acting normal. Tired, but excited after a day of shopping, slightly distant. It's clear that she's thinking about dinner. But since I was already beginning to suspect her of cheating, her normality only intensified my worst fears. And of course I asked her how her day was with Rachel. She lied again and said they had a great time picking out baby clothes. On Sunday afternoon, we went to my parents' house for dinner and Bobby showed up with Rachel. I suddenly had an idea and wasn't sure if I should go ahead with it, but it seemed too fun to pass up. After dinner, we all went out to the terrace with drinks. Remembering what Rachel had told me about Bobby picking out lawnmowers the day before, I told him that when Cher and I bought a house, we would need a lawnmower, and that the next time Cher and Rachel went shopping for baby clothes, we should go with him to the depot and look at the mowers. Before anyone could say anything, I stood up and excused myself to refresh my drink. I knew I had just disturbed a hornet's nest because as I walked away, I heard a rumble behind me. Dr. D, so you actually hinted to your wife and brother that you suspected something. Justin, yeah, I did a lot of things at once. Both Cher and Rachel knew that they had never been together when choosing baby clothes. So Rachel must be thinking, what is Justin talking about? And Cher must be thinking, oh crap. I don't know if Bobby sure talked about his lawnmower excuse, but I know Rachel knew. I spent some time refreshing my drink. I even stopped to go to the toilet along the way. When I returned, Bobby and Rachel had already left. Cher was sitting there confused, and my parents looked confused and were whispering to each other as if Cher wasn't there. Dr. D, was there any discussion about what happened? Justin, no. I was cheerful and calm as never before all the way home. A nice conversation with Cher, as if nothing had happened. Even a week later, he was friendly with her. We even slept together around Tuesday or Wednesday, just to keep up appearances. I kept waiting for her to start the conversation, we need to talk, but she was depressed and distant. So she knew that I suspected something, but her reaction was like an ostrich, she just buried her head in the sand. But Friday was decisive. Dr. D, was it a Friday night of get-togethers with the girls at Mulligan's? Justin, exactly. And this time I wasn't going to sit in Mulligan's for 3 hours. I would simply find out again what I already knew, she is not there. I needed to find out where she really was. So this time I got more creative. He rented a car that she didn't recognize, put on a strange hat and dark glasses, and lay in wait for her near the bank to keep an eye on her. I followed her at a safe distance, trying to stay away so that she wouldn't notice me. But she drove in the opposite direction from home south, on Route 24 towards Taunton, although she should have been going north. But I lost it at a traffic light when the car in front of me decided to stop on yellow instead of passing. So I learned 2 things. She wasn't at Mulligan's hen party, and she wasn't going home. At first I was disappointed, but then I had a great idea. What if someone wasn't home yet? Dr. D. Bobby. Justin, exactly. I stopped and sent Cher a message, asking her to text me when she was home. She asked what was wrong, and I lied that I was having dinner with 2 guys who interned for me at the Lobster Bib, but I didn't want to stay late, just let me know when you're home. She said she was jealous and wanted dinner at the Lobster Bib too. I played along and said, come on over, it's only 20 minutes from the bank, to which she replied that she was already at Mulligan's with the girls. Then I drove back north to Rachel and Bobby's house. I drove back north to Rachel and Bobby's house. I went to see Rachel, and as I suspected, she was alone. I asked where Bobby was, and sure enough, he was with friends in some bar. To save the story for Cher in case she wondered what I was doing, I told Rachel that my dinner with the students was a bust, so I ordered pizza. Rachel and I had dinner together. She was nervous, something was clearly bothering her. We talked. She talked about problems with Bobby, he was often absent, and her feminine intuition suggested that another woman might be involved. Then she fell silent and looked at me, as if she expected me to finish her thought for her. Then I realized that we were thinking about the same thing. She asked if I knew where Cher was. I said I don't know. I asked if she had any idea where Cher was. She said she didn't know either. Soon the pizza arrived, and we relaxed a little and talked about this and that, but Rachel returned to her problems with Bobby. She mentioned that this was the last thing she wanted to deal with, as she had other difficulties. I asked what she meant, and she reluctantly admitted that she had female-related health problems. I soon learned about this personally. This led to new problems. Sonny, sorry to interrupt again, but how did you get involved in women's issues? Justin, I started having some unpleasant symptoms and went to get them checked. While I was waiting for the results, I remembered that last week Cher mentioned that she had visited her gynecologist. It was one of those moments when a man only listens with half an ear, like when a woman asks you to buy her pads. The man simply doesn't pay attention. But now everything suddenly became important. I was informed that I have a sexually transmitted disease. I hadn't slept with anyone except Cher, so I knew she gave it to me. Dr. D, did this become a reason for confrontation? Justin, not yet. My first call was to Rachel. I took another pizza. It seems she has become our consolation. I went to her house, and we sat down to eat. I directly said that I knew about her illness. I wasn't sure, but I decided I needed to get an honest answer. She asked how I knew. I told her that I also have this disease. I asked her to be completely honest and asked if she had sex on the side. She said no. No sex, no flirting, no kissing, nothing. She was a good wife. I told her that I believed her, and then told her that I had the same type of disease. She gasped because she had the exact same infection. We both realized that our marriages were over. We both realized that our spouses had put us at risk. And at that moment, a message came from Cher. She had just returned home. 5 minutes later, Bobby came in. He saw the pizza and beer and looked unhappy. He wanted to know what was going on here. I made a snide remark that I hoped he didn't think I was spending too much time with his wife. I then turned to Rachel and asked if she could handle it on her own or if she needed my help. I wasn't sure Bobby wouldn't get violent. She assured me that everything would be fine and thanked me for coming. Bobby has never been an aggressive guy that I know of, so if Rachel says she feels safe, that's good enough for me. Dr. D, where did you go after you left Bobby and Rachel? Justin, straight home. It was only 15 minutes away. Enough time for Bobby to call Cher and warn her. When I arrived, she was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine. I asked her if she didn't have enough drinks at Mulligan's with the girls. She started crying and said, "I think you already know." I said she must have just talked to Bobby. She simply nodded. To tease her, I asked if she would go pick out cribs with Rachel tomorrow or take the day off to treat her illness. She continued to look at the floor and sob. I asked how she managed to meet Bobby and sleep with her, knowing that they both had an STD. I said that I know from myself. I have such unpleasant sensations that I could not sleep with anyone. She admitted that by the time they met in a cafe, they both realized that there would be no sex. It was too painful for both of them. And she added to his discomfort by confronting him about his infidelities. She knew that she was only with him and me. She knew Rachel was faithful. She knew I didn't cheat, so Bobby was the weak link in the chain. So they sorted things out. Can you imagine? She was angry at him for cheating on her. When she told me this, I just laughed in her face. He said she had no right to complain. I said that the difference between her and Bobby is not one of quality, but one of quantity. They're both prostitutes, it's just that Bobby is a bigger prostitute than she is. Then I sarcastically congratulated her on this. I said that I had already been tested and that the STD she gave me was the same strain that Bobby gave to Rachel. Her breath caught. I told her that her doctor probably told her the same thing mine told me, that HIV antibodies don't show up on these tests if we're all newly infected. These antibodies should be checked after a few weeks. She gasped again. Apparently her doctor didn't tell her all the details, or she just wasn't listening. Knowing Cher, I'm willing to bet she just wasn't listening. Then I mentioned that one of Bobby's favorite places was a roadhouse in Chicopee. It's a little over an hour's drive, but apparently he liked the road girls there who offered sexual services. Maybe he felt safer hiring girls away from home. It looked like Cher was about to faint. Dr. D, have you already been tested for HIV? Justin, yes, I'm clean, and so is Cher and Rachel. As for Bobby, who knows? He left after Rachel kicked him out the door. Maybe he now lives at that same gas station. Dr. D, so the divorces did take place. Justin, yes, me and Rachel used the same company. Everything went with minimal hassle. There were no children. They divided their property and said sayonara to each other. Dr. D, do you ever meet Cher or Rachel? Do they still live here? Justin, Oh yeah, Rachel and I became friends. We were brought together by common pain, but nothing romantic. We always respected each other, but there was never romance between us. We had lunch together several times. She invited me to a party to introduce her to her cousin who was single. She was cute, but not my type. But you can't avoid meeting Cher, don't forget. We've known each other since childhood. We have mutual friends. We go to the same stores and restaurants. She sat down with me a few weeks ago when she saw me at Back Bay Jimmy's. She asked if she could join, and I agreed. She had coffee with me, and we had our first normal conversation. I couldn't believe it was the same woman. She apologized for the way she treated me, admitted that I was better than Bobby, but she was too stupid to understand it and too immature to get married at that age. She said that she does not plan to get married again until she is 30. She wants to be more confident in herself and doesn't want to hurt someone again the same way she hurt me. I asked if she had spoken to Rachel and then immediately apologized because it was none of my business. Cher said she called her and offered to meet. When Rachel said no thanks, Cher apologized over the phone, saying she was sorry for disrespecting her and ruining her marriage. Rachel replied that there were a lot of women, and STDs were proof of that. Butcher said that despite this, she played her part, even if she was only one of many, and should not have done this to anyone, especially her family. Dr. D, do you think you and Cher might get back together as time goes on? Justin, she hinted at that too. She said she became wiser and all that. I told her what I'll tell you. Who knows how I'll feel in 50 years. But now I don't see myself in a relationship with anyone. I can't even trust a woman who hasn't betrayed me yet, let alone one who has already done so. She nodded her head quietly. Jack, I sent Sana a message as I settled into bed. This has already become our tradition. Hey, sunny sunshine, are you sleeping? I can't sleep without saying goodbye to you, Jackie. I was shocked by Justin and Sherilyn's story, so I don't sleep well either. What got you so hooked? Sunny, I was reckless a couple of times in my youth, and now, looking at how venereal disease has destroyed the Campbell marriages, I think how lucky I am that my carelessness did not lead to serious consequences. Darling, how do you think I feel? I've also seen everything, and I'm also very lucky. You always joke that you were a slut, and it bothers me. Do you have feelings for me, Jack? I feel good when people take care of me. I'm not used to it. I think you know I'm starting to develop feelings, but I'm not going to admit it over text. Jack, you're an old-fashioned romantic. That makes you the best in my eyes. But I still take one thing seriously. Safe sex if you keep going out. I don't have the right to tell you how to live your life, but I would feel terrible if something happened to you. I care about you that much. Jack, I'm touched. I trust my instincts when it comes to condoms. I've used them often when I feel like I should. I've been careless a couple of times, but I've been lucky. I'm in a new phase of life now. I don't quite understand. I have a special person in mind, and I don't want to ruin everything by bringing him unpleasant surprises. So are you abstaining? Definitely slowed down, honey. I always use protection now, and I've cut back on the number of dates I've been on. What's this change for, Sonny? I have a special person in mind, but I don't think he wants me. I had a feeling that he wanted you, but you were afraid of breaking his heart. Honey, I'm a work in progress, but so far he hasn't asked me out on real dates. The only dates are at 7 a.m. for breakfast, and he misses lunch because of work, so there aren't many other options for meals. Sounds like someone is hinting at dinner. Yum yum, Jack. I vote for steak and lobster. Sounds like Clancy's. Great place for steak and lobster. Are you inviting me to dinner, Jack? Yes. What? What? What are you asking, Jack? I thought we already discussed this. I haven't heard the question yet. Are you new? You've already asked me out on dates. Oh, I see. I'm completely out of shape. Okay, here's how it goes. Sonny, will you make me the happiest person in the world and go to dinner with me tomorrow night? Haha, Jack. I can almost see you getting down on one knee. It's just dinner. Are you sure you don't want to ask my father for a blessing? Okay, overdone it. Like I said, I'm a little out of touch, and I'm super nervous. Are you nervous about me, honey? Yes. I know that the main rule on dating is not to show your feelings, but this is different. It's worth worrying about. I understand you, dear. I'm nervous too. I'm afraid of falling in love and afraid of missing out. So, Sonny, I asked the question that you practically begged from me. You literally beat it out of me. Yes. Pick you up at 6:30? Hooray. And you know my address. It's still the same. Now let's discuss the wardrobe. Do you want to discuss how I should dress? Not you, Jack. Me. Here are the rules. For everything you ask me to wear, I will choose one thing I won't wear. So if I say I like that dress with the zipper in the front, will you wear it? Do you like this dress? Sonny, I love all your dresses. Still trying to pry into my secrets, Jack, you mischief. Okay, I can wear this. What won't you wear? It's for me to know and for you to find out. Now I'm intrigued. What can I say, Jack? I'm an intriguing girl. Breakfast tomorrow. No, Jack, it'll ruin the date. And I don't work tomorrow, so I'll take the day off. I won't see you until 6:30 tonight. It's time to go, honey. It's time to start sorting through my things so I can decide what I'm not going to wear for you. I'm looking forward to it. Good night, Sonny. Good night, dear. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.